Okay, so you're going to speak to us today
Yes, ma'am.
On writing, which is
Yes.
always good, on how to keep writing, make a schedule, stick with it, which is something we all need to be concerned with.
Thank
Melanie.
you very much. Thank you all very much for having me here today at the Authors Guild of Tennessee. I appreciate the invitation to speak, and thanks to Cheryl for helping me get oriented and set up here. And thanks to Danita, too, for inviting me, who couldn't be here today. I really miss getting to see you today. So I'm going to be talking today about keeping the writing drive alive. Because we all know as writers, don't we, what we are supposed to be doing. We're supposed to write, aren't we? I mean, it's what we love to do, or at least that's what we say, though sometimes I think writing is a bit of a masochistic endeavor. What we're supposed to do is wake up before the sun, pour ourselves some caffeine, open up our laptop or our blank book, and lose ourselves for our daily set amount of time in our bliss of creating using language. We've read books about how to do this, listened to workshop leaders exhorting us to do this. We have writing friends or frenemies who do this. We have writing idols who do this. And maybe, hopefully, you are one of the diligent, blessed people who actually does do this every single day. And if so, I'm envious. Kudos to you. But what about the rest of us? What happens when life happens? What about the 9 to 5 and the parent or partner with the health problem? What about the kids' soccer practice and the procurement of dinner? Or what about the writing project that began as your passion and now feels like your albatross? What about all the stuck spots, the tight spots, both in your life and in your writing? Well, you probably already know what to do there too. And what I'm going to talk about today probably isn't anything very revelatory to anyone here. But maybe sometimes a little reminder can be just what we need to help us all get going again if we are in one of those stuck spots. I've been writing just about all my life. In that time, I've been influenced in my writing philosophy by countless speakers and teachers and writers. I've read Julia Cameron's The Artist's Way, Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird, and Natalie Goldberg's Writing Down the Bones in particular, but certainly not to the exclusion of other authors' ideas and suggestions about writing. So, just to say in advance, a good bit of what I'm sharing here today, I am passing on as received wisdom from others. So, in the midst of less than ideal circumstances, how can one keep that writing drive alive? For one thing, I think it's important to remember that if we are writers, then everything we are doing can bring us closer to writing if we let it. They say nothing is wasted, it's all material. Riding the wave of what is happening in our lives instead of resisting, wishing we had the perfect quiet span of time we might not have, can help us in the long run. Another thing that we can do is to listen to ourselves very carefully. Do we really need to give ourselves a good kick in the butt? That is, are we dodging or procrastinating or not stretching ourselves? Or do we need to lighten up on ourselves a bit? Are we doing the best we can with what is going on right now? Knowing the difference can keep us from beating ourselves up when that's not what we need, and from turning our beloved writing project into some kind of a looming boogeyman. But it can also keep us from not settling, not challenging ourselves when that's what's needed. Another thing that I think can be helpful to remember is that we can make the most of what's available to us. For example, I used to think writing in large chunks of time at night on my computer was my ideal situation. And I heard others extolling the virtues of early morning writing, and I thought, I am just not sharp at that time of day. So there must be something wrong with how I'm doing this. I guess I am just not a virtuous writer. But then over time, I realized that it's much less important that we are writing perfectly according to others' ideas of perfection or even our own than that we are writing. Not because writing is the right or virtuous thing to do, but because writing helps us keep our heads in the game. So, let's say you just happen to be in a situation that you don't have the perfect span of time, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours a day. Well, maybe you have 30 minutes. If you don't have 30 minutes, maybe you have 15. 15 minutes? That can be significant enough of a span of time to make a difference? Sure it is, or it can be. It has been for me. I work every day. I don't always have large spans of time, and I would never have believed 20 years ago that I could get much of anything done in a 15-minute span. But you know what? You can get a sentence in 15 minutes. Maybe the sentence one day is so-so or cruddy, but sometimes even so, there's a nugget there that you can develop or expand at a later point. And occasionally, you even get a sentence fully formed. And sentences have a way of begetting more sentences. Sentences build paragraphs. Paragraphs build chapters. And you know what else? That 15-minute sentence keeps you connected to the project. Your mind is still at work. It makes it more likely that ideas will keep on coming, even when we are doing something else, like mowing the grass or doing the laundry. If you keep close tabs on that project, then you can be doing something else at some other point in the day, and all of a sudden, bam, something comes to you. You got to go write it down because your mind is still connected to that project. As for me, I don't always get a chance to write every day, even though I know that is what I am supposed to do. But as much as possible, I try to do something every day to help me stay in touch with my writing. If I just don't have the stamina or acuity to write that sentence tonight, maybe I reread what I wrote the day before, or I might stay connected in other ways. I might listen to music that ties into what I'm writing. Myself, I tend to write to music, and a writing project for me, tends to acquire a playlist that centers around a touchstone or theme song for that particular project. And one way that I have found to help me stay close to writing when I'm not writing is to take that song, whatever it is, with me everywhere. Doing this helps me keep my head and heart in the story. But that might not work for you, so you might wear a piece of clothing your character favors, or drink your coffee the way your protagonist would, or order a lunch your character likes. Sometimes these tricks also help if you're stuck on a project. Living a little closer to your protagonist for a little while can help to jar that stuck place loose. If you don't know what your character is going to do next, how about taking a little time to watch their favorite movie or TV show, or engaging in their favorite sport? Anything that connects you thematically to the work, moves you closer to its soul or essence, can give you that nudge of what it means to you to help keep the writing drive alive. You get the picture. Still, another favorite way to help me get unstuck, or to freshen my view of what I'm working on, is to shake up the way I write. to write longhand instead of on the computer, or write out on my deck or in a restaurant instead of in my living room. I sometimes enjoy writing in those little steno notebooks that have the spiral binding at the top of the book instead of on the side. It lets me flip the pages really fast when I'm writing, and that can give me a bit of a change of pace from a regular blank book or notebook. I find that that change of scenery or change of writing method can change my perspective in subtle ways or force me to focus, and that can benefit what I'm working on. For the competitively minded, setting goals, realistically attainable goals, can also help spur your writing along. Maybe you have a submissions deadline you want to make, or maybe you just benchmark and challenge yourself. You'll have a chapter done by next week, half the book in 6 months. I wrote my novel, The Book of Susan, this way. I had a particular sense of urgency because I'd had an agent show an interest in my writing, who disappointingly did decide to pass on the project in the end. But I didn't know that at the time, and I was determined to finish the book in about 1.5 years so I could get it to the agency as quickly as possible. There were nights after work I just did not want to write that next scene, and yet there I was with my butt in the chair writing because the schedule I'd drawn for myself, which admittedly can put some kinds of people off, motivated me. Reaching each milestone gave me a sense of momentum that helped propel the novel on. Because writing can be such a solitary pursuit, it can also be good to have and be accountability partners with another writer to keep each other on track. Maybe you actually swap writing, but you don't have to. You can just keep each other apprised of progress, word or page counts, scene or chapter tallies. Maybe you get together occasionally to celebrate certain milestones. Having someone to encourage you along the way and to check in with you can help keep you going when things get tough. All of this has been a subject I really wanted to talk about today because it's what I needed to hear about too. As I mentioned earlier, I've been writing nearly my whole life long. A little bit about myself: kindergarten and elementary aged stories about favorite toys gave way to early novels with my own original characters in shoot-from-the-hip plots. Modest writing successes in high school and college followed. Later involvement in writing community led me to deliberate forays into short fiction, which finally resulted in submission acceptances to journals. I've since had 2 novels published: The Dead Shall Rise from Knoxville's own Celtic Cat Publishing, and The Book of Susan from Paraclete Press. I was a serious reader of fantasy early, and I still enjoy writing that has fantastic elements, but I also read literary fiction and Appalachian literature, and my own work occupies a space, or maybe several different spaces, inside each of those territories. During all those years of writing, I've learned that every project is different, having its own unique excitements and enticements and challenges. And I've learned that lessons learned are sometimes ones relearned in new contexts. Sometimes, well, we don't forget exactly. We still know what we know, but at a particular moment in time, if things are kind of rough, we just can't see what we need to see. And so sometimes we still need that friendly little reminder or two about writing when we're trying to somehow shoehorn writing into our lives. And I am no exception. You see, right now I have my own forever project, or it certainly seems that way, one I've been trying to tackle in one form or another for about 30 years. I had given the project up for lost at last a couple of years ago, only to have it assail me again fairly recently. And it's come to me at a time in my life when I've been dealing with a number of personal things competing for my head and heart space. And then, of course, there's the day-to-day living to do. And altogether, it can seem like a lot. So the things that I've talked about today, about employing these tactics to help keep that writing drive alive, I have absolutely used them. I've been using them. I try to remind myself to use them. I'm reminding not just you all, but myself too, that what I'm living through, it's all material if I allow it to be. I try to assess when to push myself a bit more, when not to get lazy and fall into YouTube all evening, and when to back off and give myself space. There are nights you just need a little YouTube, right? I try to dash off sentences in dead time when it shows up. And I listen to my theme songs in the car or while working and whenever else I can. I've been known to eat meals the way my character would. I remind myself that it's more important to forge ahead on this draft and to simply write than to make every word perfect this time through, because that's what revision is for. I write in varied ways, in varied places, and I have writing friends I'm sharing progress with. And that's what I'm going to do today, actually. In closing, I'm going to share some of my progress on my work in progress, this interminable but necessary thing that I'll probably be writing on for many more years to come. And I'm going to share it with some new writing friends, all of you. And I hope that this humble offering that I'm going to read will help remind each of you of that spark in your own work that first captivated you, if that's what you need to remember. Or will help to remind you that every little step you take, despite everything, actually does move you forward. We're writers, and we write. That's not what we do. That's who we are. And to close, this is from my novel in progress, which is untitled. And I'll read a little bit from this, and then afterwards I will be glad to answer any questions you may have about anything I've said or have not said. On Friday, the 13th of October, he stood on the gym floor in his kilt and white t-shirt before a dark and silent microphone. The room blared bright, but pressed about him so dark, as he felt the large dark holes between the lights swallowing up the air. His hands were tight at his sides. Violent light flared all through the squares of wood at his feet, as everywhere loud sounds shattered across him. His face took everything that came. The students in the bleachers whistled and laughed and yelled things that struck him hard, jarring the breath from his chest and leaving bitter, ugly marks. He kept his eyes firm upon the narrowness of their eyes, their twisted mouths wrenched open. He glanced to the table where the three judges sat, a woman and two men. They had come down from the Arts Center to name the three students worthy enough to place. The judge's eyes were made of asphalt. He would not look there again. He lifted his eyes, drew up his chin, and began carefully to look among the faces for hers. The music cued overhead. His mouth drew up tight, and the backs of his legs went taut. He felt a slow knotting in his stomach. Still, there were many students who kept talking and whistling and shouting. He could hear, too, sometimes the music of those in the room with him, bursts that throbbed with an electric growl, or that wended away from him like green growing to the far corners of the ceiling. The tumult became a surging, hissing roar in his head. He glimpsed her then, suddenly, high in the stands. She sat in a row of girls, her pointed elbow upon her pointed knee. She sat quietly, and she was watching him. The palm of her hand rested lightly against her face. He could not tell the look of her eyes, to see something of what she thought. He looked away with a tightening in his throat. The music overhead crashed open then, and the drumbeat followed. He tried to listen. He listened for the moment to sing. As he listened, his breath took a different rhythm, deeper, evenly measured. He closed his eyes. He felt the breath gathering behind his breastbone. He wanted to win at something. He wanted to know what it felt like when it happened. In the next swift breath where the lead vocals would be, he was singing. His voice went everywhere, and the room dissolved into the sound. He kept his eyes shut. He pulled his hands toward his very center. Like rhythmic bursts of neon, the song trembled and pulsed. He made it move. His heart beat into the song, and he melded his voice to the music, breathing the song into being. And then he turned the song towards them, to the faces he could no longer see above him, students and teachers and judges, and the wild flurry of their music all about him, like hail and snow and rain. He could hear their music turning, too, towards the sound of his voice. It always happened. He did not know how it happened or why. He felt only the floor under his feet and the push of the muscles beneath his lungs, and the music all inside him coming out, pouring, bleeding out. He felt only that they listened to him with all their bodies, with their blood and their tissue, their skin and their bones. He heard it in his head as their music came to him, wherever his voice took the song, which was always the place the song should be. Then the song rose to the final syllable, and he held it suspended. The music shrieked and went hurtling into the fade, and the gem lay utterly quiet beneath. His breath came and went. All around him, the sound of the light was falling to the floor. He opened his eyes. The eyes of the students and the teachers looked back at him. Rows upon rows of them tiered up towards the ceiling. He did not know what they saw now with their wide electric eyes when they looked at him, only still that it was something far other than they. He opened his hands and lowered them again. He was the only one in the room that moved. In the stretch of stillness, in the distance in which he always moved, he turned and walked from the microphone. As he walked, he heard the sound of a lone pair of hands coming together over and over. He did not turn his head to see, but deeply wished the hands might belong to her. I'm gonna put my glasses on so I can actually see well now, because I can't see this with the glasses on, and I can't see you all without the glasses on. So, thank you all again for having me today. Are there any
questions?
Questions? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that was a spectacular presentation.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
You sure bring a scene alive and get into a character. Terrific. So her books are for sale. She's got some in the front. I bought one. I was interested in the folklore of Appalachia. So,
Can you give little synopses of each book?
Yes, we'll try. I will do that. I will try to keep them short. I have a tendency sometimes to ramble about things.
Or the back cover or something?
Yes, absolutely. This is my first book that was published. It's called The Dead Shall Rise, subtitled A Tale of the Mountains. This is the story. It is kind of a magic realism kind of novel, a bit like a folk tale. It's very atmospheric in that way. Even though it is set in the early 21st century, it's intended to also feel somewhat timeless in the way that it's narrated. And it is the story of this sort of little mountain village, a fictional mountain village called Beulah Creek. It is the story of a mysterious woman with no name who comes to the village and decides that she is going to move into the haunted house that is there, reputedly haunted house, that is there in the village. And it's not because she doesn't believe it is haunted, it is because she does believe that it is haunted. And she believes that she is going to go and to help the ghost to find rest there. A lot of people in the town don't take kindly to strangers coming into the town, and so they are somewhat mistrustful of her and of her motives for doing this. There is one old woman in the town who goes by the name of Grandma Barnes, and she's the only person still living who knows what took place up there in the house that is supposed to be haunted, or the most of what she knows anyway, of anyone. So there are a lot of people in the community who are suspicious of her, but there are some people who believe in her and what she is trying to do. She, like I said, she has no name and she comes with no past. And so she, as you read the book, you learn that she does come with a past, and she is trying to, by doing what she's doing, she's trying to lay her own past to rest as well in the course of the book. And so this story it's like I said, it has some magical elements to the book. And the ghost, one of the things that was really important to me in writing this book is that the ghost is actually a character in the story. It is not a book where things go bump in the house and whatever. The ghost is an actual character with actual, motives, and like any other character in the story. And so I believe in haunted houses. So it was really important to me to have an actual haunted house in the book. So that's my first novel. The second book, The Book of Susan, is also set in Appalachia, but it's a very different sort of thing. It is, in some ways, it is set more in a suburban Appalachia. This is the world of the internet and colleges and libraries. I mean, this is more of, mythic Appalachia. This is like the little mountain town place that's cut off from the rest of the world. This is set more in a fictional set of communities up in Upper East Tennessee, and it is set in more of it's set in about 2005, I believe. And in this book, this is the story of a college professor who is seeking tenure. Her name is Susan. She is married to a judge named Samuel, and they have it's actually a bit of a retelling of the Saul and David stories from the Old Testament. Susan is the Saul character, and Lorraine Davis is the David character, but it's all told from the point of view of Saul. And this is the story of a woman who learns actually that she has bipolar disorder. And that's what happens is this Lorraine, she's married to this judge named Samuel, and she has this woman, Lorraine Davis, who comes and becomes part of their circle of friends that meet sort of weekly in their home. There's sort of a community literati, shall we say, and they also do music together and other things. And Lorraine Davis shows up, and Susan begins to believe that God is telling her that Lorraine Davis is going to be taking over her life. And so that's what this is about. Susan then begins to write a book that she believes that God is telling her to write, and so she narrates the whole story herself in the first person. So this story is about what happens with Susan. So, and of course that story. Thank you all again very much.
Thank you.